Ernest Hemingway. In 5 minutes. Hemingway was born in 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois. He was the second oldest of 6 children. He loved to travel. Many of his novels were set in Spain, France, Italy, and Cuba Key West. His father, Clarence Hemingway, taught him how to fish and shoot. His love for these childhood activities would shape his writing style. His writing always had a distinct voice, even from early on. His ability to describe detail was a part of what makes him one of the best authors of his time. Hemingway wanted his writing to express the full effect of what was happening. He wanted the reader to feel like it was happening to him. His succinct, laconic sentences are what makes him unique. He provided a new and distinct view on the world. He was athletic and was a heavyweight boxer. Hemingway's career began with his job as a writer in the Kansas City newspaper. In World War I, he was a volunteer ambulance driver for Italy. When he returned to the U.S., he became a journalist for Canadian and American newspapers. Hemingway was married 4 times. His first marriage was to Hadley Richardson. Together they had 1 son, Jack. His second wife was Pauline Pfeiffer. He named his first seagoing fishing boat after her. It was called Pilar, his favorite Spanish name and Pauline's secret name. In 1939, Hemingway would leave Pauline for Martha Gellhorn. He met her while covering the war in Spain. She was also a journalist. Lacking commitment, Martha and Ernest split. He would then marry Mary Walsh, another reporter he had met during war, this time in London. While Hemingway was living with Hadley in Paris, his best friends were other great literary writers like F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, and Ezra Pound. In 1926, Hemingway would publish The Sun Also Rises. It was influenced by his life in Paris at the time. The book was written over the course of only 8 weeks. It was based on his adventures in Pamplona as well as his love and interest for bullfighting. Many of the characters were based on people in real life. Hemingway based the main character Jake Barnes on himself. Hemingway always wrote about himself. He was Frederick Henry in A Farewell to Arms, as well as Maria in For Whom the Bell Tolls. He would also write about the people he knew. Hemingway could be harsh. If he didn't like someone, it was evident. His friendships failed due to the brutality in which he portrayed them in his writing. Hemingway, as a part of his complete collection of works, had a series of letters he wrote. Hemingway would write about his experiences. He had a love for marlin fishing, which is the occupation of the old man in his book, The Old Man and the Sea. This novella follows the life of hapless fisherman Santiago as he sets out to fish and see if his luck has changed for the better. Hemingway's love for marlin fishing came from his father, and from his need for physical exertion after working on his writing. Because of his build and his heavyweight boxing experience, marlin fishing was not too much of a struggle for the great Hemingway. He was known to enjoy taking people out on his boat, Pilar, to experience marlin fishing. This sounds similar to the plot of his book, To Have and Have Not. In 1954, Hemingway would win the Nobel Prize in Literature. After the publication of The Old Man and the Sea and his Nobel Prize, Hemingway's health began to decline, and depression began to set in. Hemingway had begun to have nightmares and suicidal thoughts. The greatness of his writing began to diminish, seeming only like an imitation of itself. In 1961, Hemingway committed suicide. Some believe that this was not an act of weakness, but rather a last exhibition of his courage.
Created using Powtoon.